Hi there, and thank you for joining us on the Overcomers Overcoming podcast. We feature those who are in the process of overcoming or have overcome any type of life encounter, life obstacle that at the time seemed to be almost insurmountable. With this podcast, we have three objectives in mind. Our first objective is we want you to know with a confident resolve you are not alone. We want to work with you. We want you to know there are others who are working with you, who want to help you through whatever you are encountering, and together we will get through whatever you're experiencing.
Our second objective is there are multiple options for any life encounter you are facing. We want to help you develop a resolve that there are various options and solutions to any life dilemma.
Our third objective is to help you with critical thinking skills. If you're encountering something that was possibly a decision you made sometime in the past, and if you had the opportunity for a life redo, you would make a different decision. We want to help you with those critical thinking skills that can help you make an informed decision and not encounter what you're going through at the moment. We are the Cooper Culture, a veteran-owned business. We work with business personnel and families to develop and sustain connected relationship cultures within their families and organizations. That type organization is one where people feel wanted, appreciated, and genuinely a part of that organization. I'm with my wife and business partner, Marty, who is helping me facilitate this podcast. Today we feature Barb Nangle, who speaks to us about her 3-decade-plus trauma of experiencing emotionalisms with her life, emotional trauma, that she largely masked for 37 or more years. And she went through various therapies, all of which seemed to miss the mark. It was over a period of time where she realized that she was masking her insecurities, her emotional trauma that had started early in childhood and manifested itself into adulthood. And then she finally got to the point where she felt she needed to establish boundaries, and part of those boundaries were not pleasing everybody. It's a great testimony to let other people know what some people are experiencing, how they carry forward some childhood traumas. Marty, what are some takeaways our listeners can gain from Barb?
Barb has an amazing story and an amazing person. How she persevered. She just kept trying whatever she could to overcome and get to know who she is. And when she found out who she is, it was such a relief. She has an amazing story and so much to give to others through her knowledge and help.
For the leaders, whether you're leading at home, whether you're leading in the workplace or both places, listen carefully, because it's very possible you have someone either in your home, your environment, in the workplace, who is masking some emotional trauma. Let's listen and learn together. Barb, it's great to have you with us. Our listeners, I think, are going to be very intrigued knowing your background, where the way things used to be with you. Mm-hmm. Having read your life summary, I'm going to give you only my perception. And for the listeners, I am not a trained psychologist, psychiatrist, anything of that nature. But as I read what you wrote about your background, I'm reading, Barb, that there may have been a time in your past where you masked some of your insecurities. Mm-hmm. In that context, you may have allowed some people to, I'm going to use the term, walk over you. Mm-hmm. I'm addressing some of these things not because I have particularly good insight, but Barb, I'm going to believe there might be people in various families, organizations, who are living a life you used to have. They're masking maybe some insecurities. Mm-hmm. And the leaders need to, I believe, create a family and a work culture to where they feel free, not coerced, but just feel free to discuss whatever the past may have been We, as effective leaders, never need, it's never appropriate to label, stigmatize, anything like that. It's just that some people go through different things. Barbara, it's great to have you with us. And certainly, if I have said anything that is not characteristic of your background, certainly correct us. But it's great to have you with us. I think you've got a great life story.
Yeah, thanks so much, Ron. You're actually right on the money. In fact, I created a curriculum, and one of my modules is called Stepping Out from Behind the Masks.
Oh,
So you are
wow.
literally right on the money. And I honestly, I'm on a lot of podcasts, but I don't think I've ever talked about the masks before. So that might be a good place for me to start. Like what I discerned, I didn't know this at the time, was that I had a bunch of masks. So one of them was, I can afford this. And I had, back in 1999, when my student loans came due, I ended up declaring bankruptcy because I had so much credit card debt that I couldn't handle the student loans and the credit card debt. I now know that the reason I developed all this debt was because of my codependence. So I was either trying to buy people's affection, trying to manage my image. Some people call that keeping up with the Joneses. That doesn't really resonate with me. It wasn't about what is society, it was about what's happening in this interpersonal situation. So, for example, if I went out one time, I went out to dinner with like 10 friends and I decided I'll buy. There was no reason for me to pay for everybody. But for some reason, I felt the need to manage my image. I also did a lot of rescuing, fixing, and saving people. So I had this mask of I can afford this. Another mask I had was I have it all together at all times. And most of the time, I do have it together. I'm a competent, capable woman. And but I acted like 365 days a year under every possible circumstances. I had it together. I had all the answers. I had a very difficult time admitting that I was wrong, asking for help, and I like needed people to believe like Barb has the answers. And I look back now and I can see I somehow grew up with the idea that I needed to have an answer for everything. I remember one time having a boss in my 20s who was like, "Do you have to have an answer for everything?" And I remember thinking, "Yes, don't you?" And that I grew up with this idea that I better know the answer to things. And if I don't, then I will better make it up because somehow I internalized this belief like I can't have flaws. I can't not know something. I think like one of the things I got in my family was like being dumb is like the worst thing in the world. Um, Another mask that I had was, I like what you like, really. And this was especially true of the men that I dated. So, for example, I have been a Dallas Cowboys fan twice. I've been a New England Patriots fan because I'm from New England. I've been a New York Giants fan. And meanwhile, I don't even like football. I don't care about football. So I felt the need to, some people call it being a chameleon. And I didn't even really realize I could go on, there's more, but I feel like you get the point that I felt like I had to put this mask up and act like I was a certain kind of a person. And I can see now that this was because I was either afraid of being judged, being ridiculed, being rejected, or being abandoned, like emotionally abandoned, or maybe even actually like abandoned, like with the boyfriends. Like I felt like being a good girlfriend meant I have to be on their team. I have to like I can't just be like good for you, you're a football fan. I had to be a fan. And I now know that that's not true. And what I learned and actually my story is that when I was 52 back in 2015, I was working full time at Yale University. I hit what I call a codependent bottom. And if you want me to talk about what that means, I can. But I got in 12-step recovery for codependence, and that changed everything for me. I had never heard the word codependent. I had been in therapy since I was about 15. So that's almost 37 years. It's 37 years of almost continuous therapy and tons of other self-development work. And that stuff kind of scratched the surface of the iceberg of my life, whereas 12-step recovery melted the iceberg of my life. And for me, because my core wound is codependence, learning to build healthy boundaries is the antidote to codependence. So that changed everything for me. And when I started to build healthy boundaries, I learned that I was using these masks as a way to kind of protect myself from this like rejection, abandonment, and stuff. And what I realized was that I could build healthy boundaries as a way to, quote, protect myself. And so, what I mean by that is learning to build healthy boundaries is about creating this sense of internal safety that I'm going to be okay and I can rely on myself and have my own back and show up for myself in ways that I never did before and withstand the vicissitudes of life. So, if someone did reject me, it would be awful, but it wouldn't destroy me the way that it may have in the past. So, I can say more about any of those things, but I realize I've been talking for quite a bit here. So, want to
Barb,
give you.
no, that is totally fine. Our listeners are intrigued with your background.
Mhm.
I would like to ask you a little bit more about codependency. First
Sure.
off, I want to ask you, and I have no interest in being accusatory in any way, but if it is factually correct, were either was your mom or dad, were they very domineering in your life to where you felt at times, well, maybe I don't measure up?
hmm Yeah, for sure. So I would say my dad was not an alcoholic, but he was a heavy drinker, and my mom was codependent. I didn't like, of course, I knew my dad was a heavy drinker because I was there, but I didn't even know that codependence was a thing. When I was a teenager, we called my mom an enabler. That was the language that was around back then. And it's not that it's not around now, but it's much bigger than that. And it was my dad she was enabling, but also us as children. Like she when I was 14, my mom asked me if I smoked pot, and I said yes, because me and my brother and a bunch of friends had been out the night before and some stuff happened. And she literally said to me, Ron, I'd rather have you smoking weed in my home where I know where you are rather than out in the streets. And we were like, yes. Now I look back and I was like, what is wrong with this woman? So she literally made it okay for us to get high and drink booze as teenagers in her home. So that and my main 12-step recovery program now is called Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families. So I didn't know that I qualified for the program because when I first heard of it, I heard of it as Adult Children of Alcoholics, and it's actually and dysfunctional families. And I now know that what's going on is intergenerational family dysfunction from both sides of my family, and that the result of that is childhood trauma. And when most people hear trauma, they think like blunt trauma, like you were in a car accident, you got beaten up, you were in a hurricane. And what I've learned is that's often called big T trauma. So little T trauma is what I experience, which is it's relational trauma. It happens over the course of time in the context of a relationship. And it's because of often, sometimes physical abandonment, but definitely emotional abandonment. So a physical abandonment is, maybe your parent died before you were born or when you were a child, or they left, or your parents got divorced, or maybe they had a chronic illness. Um, and then everybody that has that has the emotional abandonment. And I remember when I first got in recovery and was learning about this, I was like, I didn't have it as bad as many of the people in the recovery room as I did. So, like, I grew up in a house in a neighborhood with a lawn. We had a car. We always had food. My parents had jobs. I didn't get beat up. I didn't be told I was a piece of crap, but I knew that I had the traits of the other people in the program. And it was about 6 months in that I came to understand that the absence of good things happening can result in trauma. And I was like, oh, that happened. And then I later heard it stated like this: unmet needs can result in trauma. And the thing is, like, my parents are not bad people. They couldn't give me what they didn't have which they didn't have because they didn't learn it. And so the trauma results in codependence, among other things. It doesn't result in that for everybody, but it's really common. And so codependence, well, let me just say the typical codependent is someone who's in some kind of a relationship with an addict or an alcoholic. It doesn't have to be the case, but that's very common. So they could be the parents of adult children who are alcoholic or drug addicts. They could be the spouse of someone who's an addict or alcoholic, or the sibling or the adult child. And so a codependent person is someone who is essentially focused on everything outside themselves. So what does he need? What does she need? What do they need? What does this situation need? What does the organization need? What does the cause need? And to the complete neglect of themselves. So they're not focused internally at all. In fact, are often unaware of what's going on internally. And actually, this just popped in my mind, so I'm going to share it with you. Very early in my recovery, I went for a long drive in the fall to look at foliage with a friend. And I actually didn't know at the time that he was also in recovery. And I had to go to the bathroom. We're kind of out in the boondocks. And he said, well, we should probably turn around and go to that place there. I was like, that's okay. I can hold it. And he goes, yeah, actually, I don't know the next time we're going to find a place, so we should go back. And I go, that's okay, I can hold it. And he said, that's a very codependent thing, holding it when you have to go to the bathroom. And I was like, what? And he said, people who are codependent are so used to not paying attention to what's going on internally, and in fact, shutting it down and overriding their internal signals. And I was like, "Pff." I thought he was crazy. And by the way, he did turn around and take me to the bathroom. So I started to think about it and pay attention. And then I started talking to other people in recovery. And lo and behold, it's really common for people who are codependent to hold it way beyond any time that's necessary, because they're constantly trying to make sure everyone and everything around them is okay. And so the recovery from codependence, I mentioned the antidote is learning to set or to build boundaries, not so much to set them, to build them, because then you set them. And here's why: because learning how to build boundaries is essentially the process of getting to know yourself. What's okay with me? What's not okay with me? What do I want? What do I like? What do I need? What do I prefer? What's my responsibility and what's not my responsibility? Where do I end and other people begin? Because when you have been a chameleon, when you've had all these masks up, when you've been super accommodating, bending over backwards, perhaps letting people walk all over you, you don't really know who you are and what you like and don't like. Like, I didn't even know I don't like football. Right? And so it's the process of discovery, of creating like your real identity. And as you get to know that, then you start to develop standards for your life. So that's how I think of boundaries. There's standards that you have for your life, and then limits that you set for yourself and for other people to uphold the standards. So one example that I think is a pretty easy one to share is I have standards of health now that I didn't have before. So, I one of my 12-step recovery programs is called Overeaters Anonymous. So I'm a recovering compulsive overeater and sugar addict. I'm down over 100 pounds from my top weight. I didn't even know that that was a thing. And so I learned to build a whole bunch of boundaries. Like a food program is a boundary, like a food plan is a boundary. But I'm actually, oh, I just lost my train of thought. It was really good too. Okay. Oh, I know. So I was over 100 pounds, and then I also drank abusively until I was in my early 40s. I smoked tons of weed and for until I was in my 50s. And so I really abused and neglected my body. And so I have some pretty high health standards now. So I think that's a good example for a standard, then some limits that you have that most people can understand. So one limit that I have for myself to uphold my standard of health is I go to bed by 10:30 at night. I don't stay up all night watching Netflix, scrolling through social media, reading the last few pages of that good book, because sleep is a foundation of health. then a limit I have for other people is I don't allow smoking in my home because that's not healthy. So those are examples of how you would have a standard for your life and then limits to uphold those standards. Now, I was talking about building boundaries and then setting boundaries. And so building boundaries is determining what they are, and then setting them is like letting other people know. So I don't really need to tell anybody about my own boundary of going to bed at 10:30. I mean, maybe I do. Maybe I could say I need to be home because I got to go to bed. But when it comes to the no smoking rule, it's like nowadays, it's not like in the past when I was growing up, people smoked everywhere in public, in other people's houses. You didn't ask, and all that stuff. But so I can have the no smoking rule, but if somebody lights up a cigarette and I do nothing, then it's not really a boundary. It's like a wish or a hope that I had that they would, listen to my rule. But if somebody lit up a cigarette in my house, or even if they pulled out a cigarette, I would be like, there's no smoking in my house. You're going to have to go outside. And I don't just let people, I live in a condo. So you can't just stand outside my door. You have to go over there so that your smoke does not come into my home or the homes of my neighbors. Even if it's winter and the windows are closed. I don't want you, and the cigarette butt goes in the dumpster, not on the ground. So in the past, I would just put up with people's behavior that I didn't like. And it goes back to the masks that we talked about. It was because I thought I'm a nice person and that nice people don't set limits. I also I didn't say no to things that I really wanted to say no to. So before recovery, I thought of myself as a volunteeraholic. So I had volunteered for 13 different nonprofit organizations. And so as someone who volunteered all the time, I got the reputation as a yes woman. So people came to me and asked me to do things all the time because they knew that I would say yes. Well, I would say yes. And sometimes I would even volunteer for things I didn't want to do. And I thought I'm doing it because I'm nice. And then I remember early in my recovery, specifically for codependence in the beginning, I remember saying to this woman, I'm starting to get that there's this continuum of helpfulness, whereby on one end, we have this kindly, helpful, functional, healthy behavior. And on the other end, we have this dysfunctional, rescuing, fixing, saving, enabling, codependent behavior. And I think I get the difference between the two ends. It's in the middle that I'm confused. Like, where do you flip over? How do you go from being helpful to being rescuing? Like, what's going on there? And she said, Barb, I think it really matters. Why are you doing it? Are you helping the person because you want to be helpful? Are you doing it because you want them to like you? And I was like, I am totally doing it because I want to be helpful. Well, let me tell you, Ron and Marty, that question kind of percolated in my brain and I was like, oh my God, I want people's approval. That's why I keep saying yes. But I didn't know that. I truly thought I help people because I'm nice. And I actually remember saying that to somebody one time. And it's not so much I wanted them to like me, it's I wanted their approval. Like I especially wanted them to think Barb is helpful. And what I really did not want was for them to think that I was a bad person. And to me, a bad person says no and is unhelpful. And like the idea of them thinking of me being a bad person or even people being upset with me was just absolutely unacceptable to me. I would contort myself to get someone to not be upset with me. And I now understand people get to be upset. So if I have been accommodating you for decades and I stop accommodating you, if I've been making your life easier for decades and I stop making your life easier, you would be upset. That's normal to be upset. And you get to be upset. And those are your feelings and you get to manage them. Whereas I felt like it's my job to do whatever I have to do so that you're not upset because me making you upset was my fault and my responsibility. And now I understand it's not, I wasn't making them upset. It's their interpretation because there's plenty of people out there who would be like, well, it's about time you start taking care of yourself, Barb. I'm not upset at all. Go do you. Right. So it's not my responsibility to take care of other people. But when you're codependent, you feel like you are enmeshed with other people. And so you feel responsible for them and you're responsible for their feelings.
Barb,
So,
I am totally intrigued with what you're saying. And again, I want to address my very brief summary of what you're
mhm,
saying to the leaders who are listening. Uh, Company leaders, family leaders, no matter what kind of a leader you are.
mhm,
What I'm hearing you say, Barb, is that yep, you needed acceptance and you're willing to pay for that, even if you had no way of financially
mhm,
meeting that. But okay,
mhm,
hey, maybe somehow, some way, someday I'll pay for it. Most important thing is that I want to pay for it because I need your acceptance.
mhm,
A generational codependency. Again, I don't want you or anyone to misinterpret what I'm saying, but if your mom and dad were here right now, they might
mhm,
say, well, hey, that's all we knew. So that's all you knew. You were carrying forward a family tradition. But
mhm,
as we as leaders learn from you, Barb, through
mhm,
conversations, we can pick up on, I use the term frequently, data points. I'm not
mhm,
looking for it. I'm
mhm,
processing data points of what you say. Wow, Barb, I think you have a codependency. Again,
mhm,
I'm registering data points. I'm not looking for. I'm not trying to label or stigmatize, nothing like that. But Barb, I'm giving you all that background to say at some point in your life, it seems you called a lifetime out to where you
mhm,
said no more. I think
mhm,
I processed you were saying you went through, who knows, nearly 30 years of ineffective therapy.
mhm.
And
37. Yeah.
wow, 37 years of ineffective therapy
Yep.
until you by yourself with the help of somebody said, hey, you're on the wrong track, Barb. You got to
Mhm.
change. Now, I don't
Yeah.
want to suppose that what I'm saying is accurate, but that's
It
how I'm
is.
processing what you're saying.
Mhm, mhm,
I want to take a very brief moment to tell you about myself, the Cooper Culture, a certified veteran owned small business. I am a retired lieutenant colonel serving the Air Force for 22 years as an F-4 pilot, commander. I have 300 combat missions. I specialize in executive leadership training, team building, and workplace culture where we help businesses to develop a culture of loyalty, trust, and by developing personality traits and personal strengths, we can help identify those traits that support the company's objectives. We do this through half day and all day training shops. I'm also a public speaker where I welcome the opportunity to speak with your group to help you develop your team to the point where people are loyal and they know exactly how they fit in the organization and contribute to your strategic objectives. Through that, you will have a very profitable company in a psychologically safe space where people know they can freely discuss everything about the company themselves, and we are always working together to progress. Contact me at ron at thecooperculture.com. Our website is thecooperculture.com. Look forward to the opportunity to speak with your group, work with your group, to take your group to the next level to where we soar together. Let's work together.
yeah.
Barb, what was the impetus, the the process?
Yeah.
No more. Hey, no
Yeah.
more.
So
We're gonna.
yeah, so the story was that I volunteered at my church to co-lead a project serving homeless people. This is in the winter of 2014, 15. And right around that time, this homeless guy named Dan started coming to my church as a parishioner. And Dan and I became very friendly. And I remember thinking like, "Oh, this is God sending me a homeless person so that I can truly understand the plight of homeless people from the perspective of a homeless person so that when I'm doing this project, I'm serving homeless people, not the homeless." And he actually was very helpful in that regard. Well, 2 or 3 months into our friendship, we had a really big snowstorm here in New Haven, Connecticut, and Dan hated staying in homeless shelters. I can't imagine anybody would enjoy that. And so I invited him to stay at my home. And I now know, like, that's not normal. And so he did. And then he stayed another time and another time. And within a few weeks, he was practically living with me. And I soon felt trapped in my own home. So he was a self admitted alcoholic and addict. I think on reflection that maybe he also had some kind of personality disorder because this guy messed with my head in a way I had never experienced. So one day I was in therapy talking about Dan, and in the middle of a sentence, I went, "Oh my God, do you think I need to go to Al Anon?" And my therapist said yes. So I just want to pause and say what Al Anon is in case people aren't familiar. So, if people have ever heard of 12-step recovery, they've probably heard of Alcoholics Anonymous. So, that was the very first 12-step recovery program created in the 1930s. And it was the first time in the history of humans that droves and droves and droves of alcoholics stopped drinking and stayed sober. Well, the second 12-step recovery program ever created was called Al Anon, and this is for the loved ones of alcoholics. And you may be wondering, well, why do the loved ones of alcoholics need a program of recovery? And here's why. Because the things we do kind of naturally to try to get our loved ones to stop drinking, to go to rehab, to go to detox, to go to meetings, to stay sober, actually end up backfiring. So we start doing all these things to try to control and manipulate them into doing what we want. And then what we end up doing is really neglecting ourselves and making everything about them. Then the alcoholic starts to feel controlled because that's what we're trying to do. And then they get resentful. And then they use you as an excuse to start drinking. And then the loved one also gets resentful because they're like, I'm doing all this for you and you're not doing this and that. So I knew about Al Anon and I went home and whatever I put into Google, the word codependent came up. And I was like, what is this word? Now, I mentioned I had been in therapy for decades. I read a gajillion self-help books. I've done workshops and workbooks and spiritual groups and support groups and had never heard this word. And I was like, how is this possible? And I learned that there was this group called Codependence Anonymous, and I started going to that group. And then I eventually, about 6 weeks into going to that group, well, during those first 6 weeks, I remember saying to someone, "Oh my goodness, I think I need to be reparented." Now, I have no idea where I heard that term. I feel like I thought I made it up or something. So fast forward 6 weeks into going to Codependence Anonymous, I go to visit friends, Tim and Heidi. Heidi had been in Alcoholics Anonymous for 10 years at that point. She had always raved about how utterly transformed her life was. And I was like, Heidi, you're going to love this. I'm going to Codependence Anonymous. And she said, Oh, this is great. While you're here visiting, let's see if we can find a CODA meeting. Well, she couldn't, but she found an ACA meeting, which is Adult Children of Alcoholics and now I know and dysfunctional families. And I was like, I'll go for you because as I said, I didn't think I qualified for it, but her dad was an alcoholic. So we walk in, and in the opening reading, they said, we reparent ourselves. And I was like, wait, what? That's a thing? And then they read the list of the 14 traits of an adult child, which is affectionately called the laundry list. Now, Heidi tells me I sobbed the whole meeting. I don't remember. So this was April 18th, 2015. And I bought the literature and I came home to New Haven, Connecticut and started going. And that's when I learned about the trauma. And, I mentioned I had the traits and all that kind of stuff. And I now think that Dan was actually an angel placed in my life to help me hit a codependent bottom. So like I was codependent in every area of my life, but the places where it was the most difficult was in my romantic relationships. And even though it wasn't a romantic relationship with him, there was something about him that I felt this deep burning desire that I needed to rescue him, that I needed to save him, and that I felt like I there was a moment where I remember I'm in a sitting room in my basement and my laundry area was over there. I don't know what was going on between he and I. We were standing in front of the washer and dryer, and I fell to my knees. And I called this my codependent bottom. And I said to him, I'm having a relapse. And I meant an emotional, flashback. I said, I'm having a flashback. I don't know where I got that word from, but I knew this was emotional flashback. And I now know from all that I've learned over the years that that was a trauma response and it was this abandonment wound from childhood that was like inflamed at the idea. I had this dilemma, like I have got to get rid of him. This is killing me, and I can't get rid of him because it's going to kill me if I don't save him. Like that is codependence. And let me tell you something. That pain I had in that moment is unparalleled to anything I have ever felt, no matter how much grief I've had, no matter how badly my heart has been broken, no matter how much physical pain. That was hands down the most painful moment of my entire life. And there's a piece of literature in my recovery program that calls that abandonment wound from childhood a soul wound. And I feel like that's very accurate. I didn't know any of this stuff back then. I was like, what is happening? And so for me, learning to build healthy boundaries on top of all the other things I've talked about is me learning to stop abandoning myself. Because the irony is, the wound is an abandonment wound. The thing we're most terrified of abandonment is abandonment by other people. But ironically, what we learn to do is abandon ourselves. So, what I've learned is that when I stop abandoning myself, I stop being so afraid of abandonment from other people because I'm not abandoned. And then I also happen to be a person who has a higher power. So not only do I not abandon me, but my higher power does not abandon me. And now that I don't know that I've ever said it like this, but because we started talking about the masks, putting up masks is a way of abandoning yourself. You're not, and the way I look at it is this: when I bring self-abandonment into my relationships, I build abandonment into the relationships because me, authentic Barb, isn't really there. You have masked Barb in a relationship with you. You don't have real Barb. And so I've learned to be who I really am. And the way you get to know who you are is to figure out what's okay and not okay. And in the beginning, you're like, I don't know what's okay, but you keep asking and keep trying. And that's where the building of the boundaries comes in.
Here's what I'm processing, Barb. And I'm going to ask you because my thoughts right now go to IQ, EQ, SQ.
Hmm.
On the IQ intellectual scale, you're pretty high. That's my
Hmm.
guess. Very
Hmm.
confident and so forth. On the spiritual scale, you're growing. On
Hmm.
the emotional scale, you are probably pretty close to bottom, it
Yeah.
seems.
And what's interesting is I thought I was emotionally intelligent. That's what's crazy. And there were some certain areas like well, I was gonna say in friendships I was, but I mean literally every relationship, my family, my friends, my colleagues, my romantic partners, my neighbors, codependent. So yeah, I thought I was I mean, I just, despite all those years of self-development work and introspection, I did not know myself, but I thought I did.
Let me ask you, Barb, I just sense that talking more about the spiritual and the emotional part, our listeners can benefit from that. Marty and I are spiritual, we're faith based. Now, the
Hmm.
other part of this is growing yourself emotionally. I sense that right now you're a very confident person. That's what I
Hmm.
sense.
Hmm.
But earlier, who knows, 10 years ago, you were not as confident then as you are now. Our listeners need to know, how did you grow through, become a confident person? It is a matter, I think, of
Hmm.
establishing and growing through boundaries.
Hmm.
And if that, I'm sensing, Barb, even if these emotional boundaries means, well, you don't like me, or well, your boundaries are different from mine.
Hmm. Hmm.
You got to maybe an emotional part of your life to where you just accepted that yep, we
Hmm.
may be different, we don't have
Hmm.
to stop talking with each other, but you just accepted that yes, we're different. Am I off track with anything I said?
Yeah, no, no, you're right on track. And so I think a couple things about me is like I think that I always sort of felt like I liked myself. I think maybe I had high self-esteem. What I now know is that I did not have self-worth. I did not love myself. I knew I didn't trust myself. That I knew I didn't trust myself. And for me, I built self-love, self-worth, and self-trust trust through the boundary building process. And these are like some of the many, many, many reasons why I became a boundaries coach, because I want for other people what I got from that. So, what do I mean by building self worth, self trust, and self love through boundary building? So, you get to know yourself through the boundary building process. It's a process of figuring out, is this okay? Is this not okay? What do I like? What do I want? What do I need, prefer? Like when you get to know somebody, you get to like them better. And it wasn't until when I was in recovery and you go through your past and you look at your patterns, and I was like, wow, that is not a woman who feels worthy. A woman who does those things in her life, puts herself in those kinds of situation, does those things to her body, is not a woman who feels worthy. And I grew to love myself through the boundary building process. As I started to show up for myself, have my own back, and stopped abandoning myself and stopped putting up facades, I grew to really love myself. Because think about it, if you have someone in your life that starts treating you super well and giving you all the things that you need and protects you and keeps you safe, you're going to love that person. Well, that person was me. And I also built self-trust because I started actually following through. I would set limits and then uphold them. And so I grew to love myself. Now, prior to recovery, I felt like I was a powerful woman of agency. I did not think people are walking all over me. And I remember actually early in recovery, somebody saying something to me about me finding my voice. And I was like, listen, I have never been the wallflower. I have always had a voice. And she said, yeah, Barb, but you used your voice for other people, not for you. And I was like, she's so right. So I was advocating for other people, but not for me. So now I advocate for me and for other people. And I mentioned earlier that I was a volunteeraholic. I will tell you that now I'm in recovery, now that I have healthy boundaries, and I even coach people on building boundaries. I actually donate more hours of community service per week than I ever did before. But here's why. Number one, I do it strategically rather than at the drop of a hat. I don't say yes to everything. Number two, I do it by choice, not out of some sense of obligation or some compulsion that I have to do it to be a good person. And number three, I do it after filling my cup first. So I've heard it said, don't try to pour from an empty cup because you can't. Pour from the overflow. Well, the only way you can have overflow in your cup is if you fill it first. So, what does that mean? For me, it means self care. And that means what energizes me. And it doesn't mean, you go to the spa once a month. It means what do you do on a daily basis to fill your cup? For me, a lot of it is what I call conscious contact with my higher power. So, that's meditation, prayer, yoga. I also do things that I enjoy. I now read for pleasure every single day. I do puzzles, I color, I do crafts. I spend time with people who fuel me. Whereas most of my life before recovery, I spent time with people who drained me because I was giving. And when you give, you have people around you who take. And it doesn't mean that they're bad people. It's that you're making their lives easier, you know?
And you're right on, Barb. I will tell you that, and I want to ask you again if you would consider another episode because I
Oh,
think
absolutely.
our listeners need to know, okay, the axiom, you cannot give what you do not have. You've
Hmm.
got to take care of yourself, fill yourself. That's not being egotistic. It's just a matter of
Right.
as we feed ourselves, take care of ourselves, what we have flows through
Right.
us to
Right. We have more
others.
to give.
Barbara, Barb, I would like very much to continue this because we have listeners who are saying, I'm totally intrigued. I'm guessing, Barb, it may have taken, who knows, maybe even a double-digit years for you to become the person you are. But Marty, what do you think?
I love this. I really like the fact that you can give yourself permission to say no.
Hmm.
I've got me to take care of. And
Hmm.
I think that is so freeing of
Hmm.
a person that says, well, I got to take care of this, I've got to do this, I got to do that. So this has been wonderful. I'm anxious to hear
Yeah,
more.
yeah. And I want to say something that what I hear, the first thing that I often hear, especially women, is, but I don't want to be selfish. We have been somehow trained that it is selfish to put yourself first. It's not like, to me, selfish is not only do you put yourself first, you don't care or do anything for other people. That's not what I'm advocating for. In fact, I just said I give more to my community now because I fill my cup first. I'm also
Mhm.
really clear about what's okay and not okay. So when I volunteer for things, it's things that energize me. And I have limits. I don't go beyond my limit. When it gets to be too much, I'm like, this is too much. I got to step back because I'm not going to be any good to anybody. I'm going to be resentful and probably mean if I feel like I'm giving too much.
Also, the people you associate with, I feel like it's very important to say these people don't help me; they drain me,
Right.
and
Yeah.
and be very discerning of
Mm-hmm.
who you are associating with and
Yeah.
how you help them and they help you.
Hmm. Right. So I'm in much more balanced relationships where there's give and take, whereas prior to recovery and building healthy boundaries, I was in giving relationships. And even like with my friends, it was that I was essentially chasing them. I did all of the social arrangements. I did the texting and the phone calling and the setting up the thing. And what I found when I got into recovery and started having more self-worth is that I stopped chasing them and I stopped seeing them. And it's painful, but I would rather have friends who want to be with me as much as I want to be with them. So they kind of like faded away, and that meant they're not in the way. So people who are give and takers, not just takers, can find me because I'm not blocked by all the takers.
Mhm.
Barb, let's pick up on another episode because our
Okay.
listeners are intrigued with how you can, oh, let's say you're continuing to make that life balance, but you're more on the positive side of that. There are a lot of listeners who are saying, I need to have that positive life balance and I'm not there, but I can learn from Barb. Barb, let's pick up with another episode on helping people to achieve a very positive life balance.
That would be great. I'd love it.
Love it. We'll be back.
We appreciate having the opportunity to share our and our guests' life experiences with you.
The Cooper culture advances organizations to achieve and sustain high retention rates, connected communication, and trust through personality insights and principled leadership. You can contact us at our website, thecooperculture.com, and you can contact us directly at ron@thecooperculture.com or Marty, Marty, at thecooperculture.com. We work with you to help assess aspects of your culture to advance the environment and people to their best performance. We do that through our staff of certified personal performance coaches, leadership trainers, keynote speakers, and disc personality behavior experts. You can book a speaking engagement directly through our website by contacting us at ron@thecooperculture.com. We look forward to sharing our life experiences with you, some of which are profound, some of which are pretty funny. Some of those life experiences are ones we'll never do that again because we've been through stuff. We truly look forward to working with you, speaking with you, helping advance you in any way that we can.